something that I hipped you to earlier in the week. One thing that I've said to you is that a lot of your brand of spirituality, the like hippy dippy, psychedelic spirituality kind of thing, it lends itself to people who suck.
Yeah, I'm finding that.
They fucking suck.
Yep.
And I hipped you to a guy named Julius Evola.
Yeah.
Who is into the same kind of mystic stuff.
Yeah.
But is super based.
Dude.
Super based.
I'm just getting into it.
Yeah. We're gonna have to do some Evola episodes.
We definitely should. I expect that there'll be at least one or two solo episodes out of that. What was the specific book that you sent me?
The first one that I sent you, well, the only one that I sent you is Revolt Against the Modern World.
Yeah.
Which just sounds awesome.
So I had to buy it. It wasn't free. You said it was free. It wasn't free. I had to buy it on.
It's free on Spotify.
When you sent it to me, I opened it up on Spotify. It's like, pay me $20.
Huh.
So I was like, fuck you. I went to Audible where I have credits, and I just bought it on Audible.
So I share my Spotify family plan with you. Are you still logged into that?
I don't think I ever did.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's the problem. I don't think I ever did.
You should do. I'll resend you a link. I thought you did, but anyways, he's got that book. He's got another book called, I think it's called Ride the Tiger.
Yeah, it is.
And then he's got another book, but I can't remember what it is.
He has one about Hermeticism.
The Hermetic tradition, I think is what it's called.
So I started listening to the audiobook, and it was like the foreword and the introduction. So I haven't really gotten into it, but the foreword was written by somebody else about Julius Evola, and there was some really interesting shit in there that I had never heard of the guy. I didn't know anything about him, but they said he was associated with like right wing fascism, and when I'm talking about old school right wing fascism, like the real deal stuff, not the stuff nowadays that passes for it. So. Yeah, but the fact that he's one of those guys and also a mystic, and the guy in the forward, I don't think he was clearly admires Julius Evola, but it didn't come across as super complimentary to me. I'm trying to think of specifically what it was. It was something about him being solipsistic and being like using his mysticism as a tool of social manipulation. He didn't really believe the stuff he was saying. So I'm interested to actually read it.
Yeah. So the one that I sent you on Spotify is not as professionally done, I'm sure, as one that you got off of Audible. And one thing about that is if something has high production quality and it's like rubber stamped by, the establishment, we'll just say, it's going to have to put a little bit of distance between. You're not going to be able to just outright like him, and the one on Spotify that I sent you is like, it's not terribly done. It sounds good, but it's obviously not as professionally done. And I only made it through the intro. I haven't actually started any of it yet. But the person who does that intro is more, charitable towards Evola.
Gotcha.
And the first thing that struck me about that Evola thing, I'm going to read a little excerpt from it.
Yep.
It reminded me of a good friend of the show, Jason Myronchuk from the 2-Bit podcast. Jason has been blowing the whistle on a few kind of things. He's got a few different kind of plates spinning as far as ideas go. And one of them is the Vengeful Son. We had him on to talk about that.
Yep.
So Jason is kind of blowing the whistle on this like shift in the zeitgeist, shift of the spirit of the age, transferring us from the devouring mother into the vengeful son is what he's calling it. And it seems to me from that intro that Evola was like the Jason Myronchuk of, whatever year he was.
Yeah.
Because he was blowing the whistle on the devouring mother. I'll just read this. This is not a quote from Evola. This is a quote from whoever wrote the intro. Catch my breath here. Since the chthonic or earth religions go hand in hand with mother cults and their feminine leadership, Evola saw every matriarchal culture as further evidence of deterioration. It was neither misogyny nor patriarchism, intense for liberation, bondage. In his eyes, this liberation is all that matters. Everything else is meaningless alongside it. To achieve this goal, no sacrifice is too great for him. Even one's own death becomes a triumphal death, insofar as one is aware of it as a sacrifice undergone for this liberation. Who perishes in battle with this spirit is godly, because for him, the outer struggle is merely a symbol for the inner struggle against enslavement to the earth.
Yeah. So does that have to do with like a higher type of being? You know, is it like one of those like Gnostic sort of things? When he says chthonic and worldly, is he contrasting that to spiritual?
I think so, yeah. I mean, I think there is a spiritual element to it, but that spiritual element is like almost like grounding people to the earth. It's like you've got a spirit who's like saying, don't pay attention to the spiritual, be very materialistic.
Yeah.
And that's made me, we've been deep in the age of the spirit of the devouring mother, and just think about how materialistic we have been throughout all of this. The tyrannical father can't kind of ended around 45, somewhere in there, like kind of right around the I would say it was entering its death throes upon in that era. Then it kind of like fully transitioned over to the devouring mother in like the 60s.
Yeah.
And just think about like that's like the switch over point where it's like we used to be a much more spiritual culture and we just became materialist.
So the Second World War is like that big event that marks the transition from the tyrannical father, the period of the tyrannical father, to the period of the devouring mother. So you think that the era of the tyrannical father was more spiritual than the devouring mother?
I don't really know. I would suspect yes to some degree. I mean, if you think about pre-World War II, like society was much more Christian, much more
true.
Less science, less hard materialism, less where's the evidence, so in that way, yeah, I think that it was.
Yeah. I wonder also, do you remember how we were talking about the Viking berserkers and this like pagan way of life where war was seen as some kind of a sacred ritual, like some kind of participating in some sort of spiritual thing when you do war. If there's any connection between that and the Second World War, like the spirit that drove soldiers in the Second World War, then there may be some interesting overlap there too. About it being spiritual.
And I mean, think about World War I and II. You got these men going to battle to protect what is theirs. And in some ways that's materialistic.
What is theirs? Yeah.
In some ways, what is theirs also is a state of mind. A philosophy, an ethos. And that's metaphysical. There's nothing physical about that.
Will you beer me, Kyle?
I'll beer you for
Thanks,
sure.
buddy.
Yeah, we're drinking some delicious Hefeweizen. Nice German beer.
Yes, indeed.
You killed that one fast, man.
I did. I've been toying around with the idea of getting more disciplined. I did for a little while, and then I got away from it. And I do this thing where when I cut myself some slack at all when it comes to discipline,
rails.
I have this self-destructive tornado.
I'm the same way, dude.
And that's what I'm doing right now.
Yeah.
That's you're like, damn, you finished that beer quick. It's like tornado day, buddy. It's tornado day.
Yeah, I mean, I've kind of got the same instincts. I've been doing keto, and the delicious beers are not fucking keto ever.
True.
And this is a wheat beer, so it's especially not keto.
But these are the best.
It's so flavorful,
dude,
and delicious.
I'm so happy that you love Hefeweizens.
Yeah, it's my favorite, man.
Because I never got into beer really until I met my wife.
Yeah.
And then I found certain beers I liked and certain better than others. And Hefeweizens are by far my favorite. And my wife appreciates them, but she only drinks IPAs.
Oh man, not for me.
Dude, we were bowling yesterday.
Yeah.
And I picked up her beer on accident, and I took a drink of it, and I had this weird moment where my lip curled up like bitter beer face. My lip curled up, and it took
Fucking
me
Elvis.
It took me to noticing my own reaction before I realized that the flavor wasn't what I expected. I noticed the reaction before it registered. Yeah. Fucking hate IPAs.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say that I hate them, but they are definitely not my favorite beer, and I think that they're super overrated. You know, it's like a hipster thing.
Absolutely, and they're taken over. It's like
hipster thing. Exactly.
There's way more IPAs than anything else.
Yeah.
And if you like IPAs,
more power to you.
Each their own. But yuck.
Yeah, I'm not inviting you to bring beer to my parties.
You're not allowed to come to my birthday party.
Exactly. All right, so we hit on. There's going to be some Evola in the future. Exciting times.
For sure. Hey, is the Evola guy at all related to the Gerard fella that Maren Schick brought up?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
I don't know of any connection to them. There might be some, but I don't think so.
I believe there was some talk in there about like Evola being one of these characters. He's the one that tell me if this registers for you. He's the one that that evolution, that the theory of evolution was like key to his whole philosophy. He was saying like the world is always evolving, the spirit is always evolving, God is always evolving. So his whole mind frame was that that everything, like he makes that distinction between being and becoming. And he's like, the truth is everything is constantly changing. And he was described as being one of these people that is trying to merge or reconcile science to religion.
Okay.
And I don't know if that's maybe I'm misremembering.
Gerard is?
No,
Evola. Okay.
Evola.
Yeah, I don't know. I know, I knew who Evola was before I sent that to you.
Yeah.
It's not like I just stumbled upon him. I remember listening to an episode of Pete Quinonez's podcast years ago, where he did an episode with Bird from Timeline Earth, and they talked about Evola.
Really?
And this is, I remember specifically what I was doing. I was loading up firewood at one of my old jobs. It's like I have a weird memory like that. I'll listen to an old podcast and I can remember exactly where I was, exactly what I was doing.
It's interesting. Yeah.
So yeah, I might know a little bit more about Evola than you do, but not much,
Well, if I'm remembering correctly, and he's one of these guys that's trying to reconcile science and religion, those characters are always my favorite.
Yeah.
And I would put people like Nikola Tesla and Carl Jung and even Darwin and even more than Darwin, Wallace, the guy that he published Origin of Species with, because he became a spiritualist in his old age. And I think there's like two kinds of people like that. There's like apologists. They're the kinds of people that when the modern world becomes more modern and more scientific, they try to reinterpret religion to make sense, to make it cohesive with the modern world, like people like Darwin.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are people who, in the modern world, well established in that modern way of being, try to refit the old ideas into the modern paradigm. Mm-hmm. And I just fucking love it, man. I don't know, if they're right or wrong, but whenever I see someone trying to do that, I just love it.
Yeah.
I
when I was listening to that, so back when I listened to that Pete Quinonez episode with Bird, it was kind of or like really going into like the psychedelics and stuff like that. It was like right at the beginning of that. So I wasn't really thinking in that frame. And honestly, I don't really know if that's the aspect of Evola that they were talking about. It's been, I don't really remember the content. Yeah. But when I listened to that intro, the first thing, like I said, that struck me was that thing that reminded me of Jason.
Mm.
And then like right after that, he said something that it was kind of like reminiscent of the as above, so below kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, this is like right up Chris's alley.
Yeah.
So that's when I sent it to you.
Yeah.
I don't really remember where I was going with that.
I don't know, man, but one of the things we talk about is you being more of a creature of the internet and me being like a weird
boomer.
Like a weird boomer that's too young to be a boomer.
Yeah.
I'm realizing that about myself, man. Like I'm like there are certain people that are early adopters of things.
Mm-hmm.
And as much as I like to think of myself, as much as I would like to think of myself as someone who's brave in that way, I'm not, dude. I am not.
You resist.
I'm not adopting technology early.
Mhm.
I'm not adopting like changes in fashion or music early.
Mhm.
I go kicking and screaming every single time.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm exaggerating a little bit, but I just feel like, you know, like I've always been 3 years or more behind you and Matthew when it comes
Yeah.
to musical, you know. And it's like in retrospect, after I catch up, I'm like, dude, this is good.
It's good
But
shit.
in its day, I was like,
Not for me. No. Yeah, I get you, man. One thing that Matt Erickson and his co-host Cooper talk about a lot is like those generational divides, and there is a interesting similarity between boomers and millennials, which we are. You know, I frequently say that I'm the oldest millennial on the planet.
Yes, yes.
I don't think that's true, but I mean, you're a millennial and,
And
you're
I'm older than
me,
you. Yes,
so,
yeah. I'm the oldest millennial.
yeah. I'm second.
Yeah.
There is like a weird commonality between boomers and millennials, and then Gen X and Gen Z have like this weird lineup of like questioning authority, you know, not taking anything at face value.
Yeah.
And millennials, and a lot of millennials and boomers are like not so much questioning authority, happy to kind of stick in the status quo.
Yeah.
There are like Matt Erickson, I think, considers himself a millennial who is more similar to Gen X. And I feel the same way, you know, like I've always been like authority, you know, like,
Yeah.
Which is weird because in some ways now I like value authority very much, you know.
Yep. It's
but
not interesting.
It just depends on the authority, you know, like if I respect if you give me reason to respect your authority, I'm happy to, but I'm not just going to like buy everything you spoon feed me.
Yeah, that's interesting. So one of the things that pops in my head is we may have talked about this last time is the idea of respect or respecting your elders as a particular example. That's something that was kind of ground into me as a kid. It's like, you know, respect your elders, and even if they're like rude to you or whatever, it's like they deserve to be treated with respect. And the Gen Z like divide maybe is along the lines that you just outlined. It's like, no, you have to earn my respect.
Mm-hmm.
And the consequences of that are that though people in that group are going to, I don't know if this is an oversimplification, but disrespect as a default.
Yeah.
And only when you've earned respect do you, but you see how that will reflect poorly on authority. It's going to reflect poorly on the people that came before you, because in the old days that we already understood subliminally that you earn respect. You've already earned that respect, and the new people don't believe that. So the lack of appreciation, respect for tradition is like, what has tradition done to earn my respect? You know?
So I think where I kind of try to come from now is my default is to give respect, you know, but if I start catching a whiff of you being full of shit, I'm like quick to revoke that respect, you know?
Yeah.
Not, you know, I try not to revoke like the common decency and things like that, but it's like, if you say a bunch of shit that's like obviously, you know, off base, then it's like, I don't understand why I need to take you seriously, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the slippery slope there is if somebody says something, let's say, like a moral difference of opinion between you and somebody else. Some example pops up and they take one side of it that you would never have taken. Then you lose respect for them entirely, even though it was only this one moral issue that you had a problem with, you know?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. And I was kind of thinking that earlier. It's like, when you talk about like Generation Z, the Zoomers, and their like lack of respect for authority, they're so young that what they're basing their respect on is like silly stuff a lot of the time. You know, it's like, okay, this person said something that you don't agree with, so you don't respect them anymore. But they've also been like taking care of you your entire life, providing for you your entire life, you know? So there's something to that for sure.
Oh yeah, there's a problem with not naivete that I've you know been the victim of myself. If I was a younger man, be an older man that's admirable to me, that's somebody who I look at and I'm like, oh man, I want to be like them. And maybe it's because they have a cool car and I'm a teenager, or maybe it's because they're what's that guy, Tate
Andrew Tate.
Yeah, maybe he's an Andrew Tate fella that's like really successful talking to girls or whatever. But you know what I mean, it's like
Drives a Bugatti.
yeah, exactly. It's like that is no reason to check the box that you've earned my respect and admiration. But when you're young and naive, you don't fucking know the difference.
Yeah. And like your dad says one thing that is like cringe to you, and it's like, oh, fuck this guy, but meanwhile, he's been paying for your food and your shelter. And, that's like one thing that I have like come to understand about love over the years is like, love is not cuddles and pats on the head and, things like that. Love is duty. Love is like, I go to work every day to feed your fucking ass,
Yeah.
And even when you're a disrespectful little shithead, I put food on the table for you because I love you.
100%.
And that is something that I think a lot of people grow into respecting,
Yes.
It's like when you start doing it, you're like, oh man, I treated my dad like shit,
100%.
Yeah.
I wonder if that can be taught. Do we have to come to that realization? Because it seems everyone I know, even multi-generationally, follows that pattern that you just described. I have to be not just an adult, but pretty deep into my adulthood before I really appreciate what my parents did or, who they are.
I do think it can be. I think, the societal experiment that we've been living in has had like the knobs twisted and manipulated to make people not prone to respect authority. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think there's something to that. And I think if we can adjust, we can get that dialed back in. And I think, big surprise for me, I think a big part of that is becoming more religious as a society because respect your mother and father.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Father
absolutely.
and mother, however you would say it.
Boy, that little pack of nicotine things.
It's buzzing.
Oh boy. So you brought up Jason Miranchuk earlier.